Hi, folks. I want to talk about anger. Probably everyone's least favorite emotion. I think we've been socialized to see it as dangerous, as something to fear, something to avoid, and something that maybe is inappropriate, oftentimes seen as inappropriate in the workplace or in community settings. And I've been hearing from facilitators and leaders for the last year or so a real hesitation to engage with it in the public setting, in the public arena, a feeling that maybe it's too volatile, that it could get too out of control. So I thought I would give you some tools to work with anger. It is actually a healthy emotion when it isn't out of control, when it's not too volatile. And a thing to note is that your capacity to work with emotion, other people's emotion, is directly related to your own capacity to make space for anger inside of yourself. And so knowing how you work with it, whether you tamp it down and avoid it at all costs. I know in the house I grew up with, it was seen as a very dangerous, difficult thing. And so harmony was prized. All the positive emotions were amplified, but emotions like anger were seen as not having a place. And yet it can be a catalyst to change. It can signal that a boundary has been crossed. It can point you in a direction that says, oh, I think I need something different here, right? Because remember that emotions are just a path to make meaning. They are not truth in themselves. So the same is true for anger. It's not, it doesn't tell you exactly what the problem is, it points you in a direction. So if you can figure out how to regulate your own anger, so lots of things like breathing in the moment, right? Box breathing, that's four, breathing in for 4 counts, holding it for 4 counts, breathing out for 4 counts, holding it for 4 counts. You can do that when you're in conversation with people and they'll have no idea what you're doing. One of my favorite things to regulate my own emotion is that I've trained myself to feel it rising. So to notice the physical symptoms of anger as it comes up, so I can feel it kind of coming up my legs, up my thighs, into my belly. I start to feel queasy, but I just get hot. I get flushed, I get a little sweaty. I can feel it sitting right here in my chest, wanting to erupt. And so I've trained myself to say in my own head, I don't usually say it out loud, what is going on here? And that gives me a pause, a breath, a moment to get curious, to sort of investigate. Oh, okay, I'm feeling frustrated, or I'm noticing I'm really irritable, or I can just feel my anger, my reactivity rising. So what's happening? What's causing it? Where's it coming from? And that pause is your power to choose. And that pause is your power to work with it, to find the meaning. So those are a couple of tips to regulate your own emotion. If you're going to engage with other people's anger, it's really important you come from a grounded place to the best of your ability. You come at it calm and peaceful and thoughtful. And there's a couple of tools in my newest blog that will help you work with other people's anger. But here's a couple of them. One is Tara Brach is a meditator, a psychologist, a practitioner, and her work is really thoughtful and reflective if you're not familiar with her. So there's a link in my blog to some of her work. But she has a method she calls RAIN. And I love the idea of it because anger is often hot. And when you think about how do you work with anger, well, you let it rain, which is a process of cooling down, right? Of washing away. Now, she proposes the RAIN acronym to work with and regulate your own emotions. I have adapted it as applied to working with other people's emotions. So the R stands for recognize. Recognition. What is happening here? What's going on? What's being expressed? The words, the attitudes, the body language, the behaviors, what's happening? The A is to appreciate, to, kind of welcome it in, to say, hey, there's a place at the table here for this. Let's find out what it's telling us. I can tell that you're really upset and challenged by the situation. Help me understand what your concerns are, what's going on for you. So let's create a space at the table so we can work with it. I is investigate. So to get curious, ask good questions, to explore it, to recognize that there's more to the person than this moment, the behaviors, their challenges, right? There's a whole story behind it, and there's a whole experience, and there's a human being in there too. And then the N is to nurture yourself, to practice compassion for the other person, to stay in relationship, to nurture the relationship itself or the moment of shared humanity. So, rain is a really great foundational approach for working with anger. Another couple I'd offer is physical movement. So, design conversations or incorporate physical movement so that it allows people to process the anger through their body, right? Which is a path to finding meaning. But it also kind of puts a little kind of pause button on the high arousal state. So you can go for a walk, you can do walk and talks, you can have people move tables and conversation, but that physical movement also helps with the processing. How about design to give people autonomy and agency? Let them choose what we talk about, when we talk about it, how we talk about it, how they participate. When we tighten control, which is such a gut reaction, such a common reaction in the face of anger, when we tighten control on anger, people feel manipulated and managed, and that increases the anger response rather than reduces it. So let go of some of that control, create a loose enough structure that you can channel the energy of the anger and work with it. Lots of other tips in my blog, Anger, Everyone's Least Favorite Emotion. Thanks for listening. I'm glad you're here.